Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Skip, aka Skip and Tosh, here with my man Wes. Say what's up, Wes.
What's going on, everybody? You ready to talk some House of X number 5? Woo!
Dude, and this is like the day of the week that I always look forward to every week now. This book is crazy, man. Like it just continues to blow my mind, whether it's action packed or whether we're getting all these crazy reveals, man. Every time I'm done with it, I'm like, me and Wes got to talk about this, and everybody got to jump in the comments so we can hear what everybody else is saying. Because obviously, outside the bleeds outside of the frame. You know, this is not just a conversation for Wes and I, but we continue it down in the comments with y'all. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for being so active in the comments. You know, as long as you guys love what we're bringing to you, we will continue to bring it to you. We're on number 5, Wes. Wes, before we jump into it, I know we're going to jump into it, but I just need you to tell me something. Tell me in one word, describe how you felt after you closed the last page on this book.
Oh, it's staggering. Just the implications and the subtext and everything. I was like, this thing is going off the rails.
That's what I love. That's what I love about this one. Like Hickman is almost showing it, like where we thought we were going to see, you know, this beautiful plane take off, this beautiful blackbird take off into the sky. It almost starts to look like now Jonathan Hickman is showing us a train wreck in slow motion.
Absolutely. But I was happy that one of my predictions was correct. The very first frame of House of X number 1 happened after the events of House of X number 4, like I called it.
Nailing it, man. Nailing with the predictions. Well, before we jump immediately to that, let's talk about the quote, because he starts us off with these quotes to kind of get us in the headspace that we need to be. Professor X, right out the gate. Do you want to know the real difference between them and us? Until now, we were never given a chance. Professor X. And then we go right into that first panel that Wes was talking about, some predictions that we made. We get Lorna and Magnus himself, Mr. Eric Lancher, down in that pit. We still don't know what that pit is, but we know it's the pit, and we know that we got eggs and stuff in there and embryos. Wes, go ahead and talk about that prediction that you were right about, my man.
So yeah, the very first page of the whole series is a birthing scene, and you can see Charles is standing over Cyclops and Jean Grey, and it was really confusing. I was like, is he hatching mutants now? But once we saw what happened in House of X number 4, and the whole team died, including Cyclops and Jean Grey, I was like, they're going to clone them and bring them back. I was like, that page is out of order, and it's supposed to happen after this. I had a bunch of people tell me, oh, that's not what it is. I was like, I'm telling you, that's what happens. Of course, I didn't realize how they cloned them, because who could have figured that out other than Jonathan Hickman? But they were cloned.
Absolutely. That was something that I was kind of leaning towards. Of course, you know, I mean, we're don't want to say we're insiders, but we and everybody watching this, we are of that breed where we go and, you know, we're paying attention to the news and we see the cover. So we had seen the cover of X-Men 1 that Jonathan Hickman will be writing that spins off of these 2 books, this event. And we knew some of the people that were going to be there. We saw some of the other covers too. But how was the question? And sure enough, things are starting to loop around. For anybody that's a Tarantino fan, that you ever liked Jackie Brown or Pulp Fiction or even Kill Bill, that non-linear storytelling that we get, Hickman is definitely doing it here. So he's showing us a little bit of the end, he's showing us a little bit of the middle, he's showing us a little bit of the beginning, and he's rearranging things. And sure enough, so now we understand how they came back. We get the process. We know who the chefs are, and we're seeing how they're making the soup. Man, I thought what I love, again, power is a reoccurring theme between Powers of 10 or House of X. Power is a reoccurring theme. He really empowered 5 mutants that most people, with the exception of probably Hope Summers, can say were fairly benign and seemed like they didn't really have much of a
kind of boring, kind of lame, had joke powers, especially Gold Balls. Oh, you think Gold Balls is a joke, Brian Michael Bendis? Here, let me take your creation and make him completely invaluable to the entire universe in mutant survival.
Oh my gosh, Wes, dog. you just made me realize something. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get into it. So what I notice is that if you follow, I follow Jonathan Hickman. Like when his tweets go off, I get notifications. And I noticed he said something about the books. He said, "Shout out to Brian Michael Bendis for giving me the missing piece that I needed for this book." And I was like, why is he giving Brian Michael Bendis props? I know all these guys know each other, and you probably got to play nice with some people. But why is Brian Michael Bendis is one of my least favorite. He's my least favorite writer next to Tom King. Why? And dog, you just made me realize what it was. He took Brian Michael Bendis's folly and turned it into excellence.
Absolutely, he took a couple of them, made his kind of lame joke powers, and made them like the key to everything. Like that's the best thing about this is he's taken was it Gold Balls, Proteus, Hope, what are some of the other ones? Elixir, I can't remember the fifth one, but they're all the kind of throwaway mutants. They don't really do anything, and he took all of these weird powers and he made the mutant cloning machine with them. Who thinks of this stuff? It was amazing.
That's what I'm saying, man. This dude is pure genius. For anybody who's not on the train yet, get a ticket while you can, man. This guy, Jonathan Hickman, is out of his mind, and he's taking us with him. So we're down there. We see Professor X approach. They call them the Five. Is that the name that was given to them?
That's the name of the mutant cloning machine is the Five. Yes.
Okay, the Five. So we see them go through the process. We see the golden eggs being given out, and we see that they're not just they're not just golden balls. They're actually eggs that are not viable. Basically, eggs that that on their own would not be able to go from what they were to produce life out of them. And then through that process, let me go ahead and just grab it right here. We see everybody else kind of get involved. We see Proteus with his reality warping abilities, turn them from unviable eggs to viable eggs. Next up, there was some preserved DNA, and that that wasn't Elixir that injected it. That was Hope.
No, well, it doesn't really matter on that one. They get injected with whatever DNA of the mutant you need to clone.
Right. So that makes sense. It's basically whoever's available. And Hope, since she's last and she's the one that's basically the conduit of the synergy. She's the one that infuses everybody. Yeah,
so
right.
That they perform better than they normally would. She synergizes the team. It's perfect.
Perfect. She synergizes the team. So since she kind of goes last, makes sense for her to do the injections. You don't want to have the person who's next up doing that step. So Elixir gets to focus on basically the cellular replication. So it makes sense, right, Wes? They inject the DNA, and then Elixir kind of makes the DNA replicate. Who was after that?
Finally, it's dang it, what's Eva something?
Eva Bell.
Yeah, she matures them to the right age.
I'm very curious how they determine what the right age is.
Well, I imagine it's the physical or prime of the mutant. So it'd be interesting if they need to bring back Magneto. Are they going to bring back Magneto as a 50 or 60-year-old mutant that's extremely powerful leader? Are they going to bring him back as a 30-year-old mutant that's extremely powerful physically? Could be interesting, right?
Oh my God. And that's not even the most interesting part. And that's already incredibly interesting. I didn't even think about that yet. Oh my gosh. All right. So we see the process happening. Finally, everybody reaches out their hands. Hope goes ahead and does what Hope does. And I love the line too, how, we've learned creating life is delicate, almost impossible work. The truth is that on their own, these mutants would be incapable of the intricate dance necessary to pull off these Promethean feats. But hope is a great unifier. That double entendre.
Absolutely. But it's remarkable the way he came up with it. It's like, okay, I need someone. Where can I find an egg? Well, Gold Balls makes balls that don't mean anything. Well, those should be eggs. But the other ones all kind of make sense. Proteus is the warper. We'll warp them into viable eggs, and it's crazy how he came up with this fully functioning system that can't work on its own, but all together they can create life.
Oh my God. I'm telling you, he's that. Everybody has either had that friend, that family member, or knows a chef that can walk into your kitchen and you're like, dang, I didn't shop for groceries. And they'll take your scraps and make you this ridiculous, tasty little meal out of it. And you're like, how the hell did you do that? Well, that cook's name is Jonathan Hickman. So yeah, it's incredible, and then obviously from there we really start to see that process that we see in the five coming together literally gives birth to the very first scenes that we see, like Wes said earlier, from House of X #1, Xavier in the pit, the essentially Marvel Girl and Slim, aka Cyclops, coming out of the embryos, and then him doing his little jazz dance, a little looking like the Maker scenes, you know what I mean? What was the line, Wes?
Oh, I hear like some to me, my X-Men.
To me, my X-Men. All right. So now that we know that's part of the process and that's been established, we see, Professor X kind of do the last little bit where it seems like he's the one that's doing the copy paste on their consciousness, almost on their consciousness, but the data in their brain that they're backing up, on their Krakoan server, so to speak. He kind of flashes that into the mind of the new husks. I think they called them husks.
They call them husks, yeah.
Okay, and then from there, that is where they all start to rise up. We see all of the ones that we lost, which was everybody in that mission to the Forge, start to rise up, and then Storm comes out, and then that's when we move on to the next scene.
Yeah, this is pretty crazy. I'll be honest. Where things start to break down, you got the big revelation. Well, two big revelations: how they're cloning, which is smart because if they'd use Mr. Sinister, it would take 30 years to make a fully ready Cyclops. Now they can do it in a day or two. And then we see how they get the conscience back in. Of course, it's Cerebro, it's Charles Xavier, and then we see like the voice of the mutant nation of Krakoa. Like the spirit of them is now Storm, and she is kind of going off the deep end, and everyone's going nuts, and she's rallying the troops, and she's reintroducing, I believe they call them the heroes of Krakoa, and they have a huge celebration. Everyone's raising their fists, and they're calling them mutants, and it appears that Krakoa is actually a giant cult. So I think instead of Krakoa, they should call it Charlestown, as an homage to Jonestown. What do you think?
I'm with it. Oh my gosh, Jim! We get a Jim Jones reference on Outside the Bleed here this morning. If y'all, for the youngins, if y'all don't know about Jonestown, go ahead and look it up. That was one of the craziest things that happened to California, let alone like the nation. That whole thing was wild.
Pure insanity.
Pure insanity. But very
unchecked. What unchecked power can do.
Fully. And it can go very, very far. So look that up. But we're getting that vibe where it actually absolutely is seeming like that. You know what I mean? And of course, like from the outside perspective, from us as readers, and that was something that I noticed. It was very much the big speech, rallying the troops, cult-like following, building all that stuff up, getting everybody behind it. So then I went from my position as a human, and then I put myself in, in the shoes of a mutant on that island, and I'm thinking, if those are our heroes, so I'm thinking that's my hero. Like, my hero out of all of them would probably be Nightcrawler. Like Nightcrawler's my hero. We got the same name, Kurt Wagner, Kurt Fisher. So, that's my hero. He's an incredible. I love the way he gets down, and he literally went and gave his life to make sure that I have life. So I mourn him. You know what I mean? I might, knowing me, I'm gonna be like, I'm dedicating part of my life and how I get down to, Nightcrawler. And then here comes, Storm, an Omega level mutant. People from her island thought she was a goddess for so long. And she's coming out and she reintroduces not only my hero, but all the other heroes that we lost. Like I'm yelling and screaming my head off too. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. So I feel like I'm seeing something different.
Well, I'm glad you are. Let's talk about it. Tell me what you're seeing.
All right. So I don't think what we're seeing is what's going to lead into Dawn of X. I think we're either seeing Moira's 6th lifetime, or we're seeing that lifetime where it says Charles Xavier became radicalized. We're seeing one of those two, and we're seeing just how bad things will get if Charles kind of loses himself in the idea of the movement and doesn't stick to his core principles, which is essentially what's going on. Also, when you get to the reference material, and it explains how Charles once a week downloads everyone's mind so it can be stored. Everyone seems very subservient right now, and they're listening to everything that he says. I think that he's altering their minds.
I mean, he very well could.
He absolutely has access to them, and I think he's planting little seeds in their minds. He's making them more docile, more better followers that are going to follow anything. And
more subservient.
I think we're seeing Charles Xavier at his very worst right here.
Potentially, and I think that I'm glad that you brought it up, because I think, same thing. It is a matter of perspective. Like, on the outside, like that's what I see. Like if I'm not on Krakoa and I'm working with Orcus, and we get a transmission, we got a mole in there somehow, and and they're sending us back stuff like this. I'm like, oh yeah, this dude is being radicalized. Like they're about to rise up, they're about to do something crazy. Who knows? We gotta storm that island. Although that's not what happened, and that's something that I was wrong about. I thought that the humans were gonna storm the island after what happened at the Forge. We all know, everybody that's read, that's not what happens. But we'll get to that in a second. Yeah, I'm definitely, like, I see that side, and I see that as a potential. I think the thing with me is that I'm still not 100% sure, that this is Charles Xavier, although I am leaning.
I don't think it's him.
Okay.
Or at least it's not all of him.
Okay.
I think there's some, is it Cassandra Nova in there?
Hey, maybe, could be. See, that's the thing, we don't know. So. Now I am leaning towards it. Excuse me, being him. Sorry, thinking critical is a little sick over here. But I am leaning towards it being him. Just, I'm not sure if he's wearing Cerebro
or Cerebro's wearing him.
Wearing him, yeah, because Orcus and everything that the said, that the mother mold said. Like, I'm not convinced that the mother mold, like, the hardware got destroyed, but the software, the OS, could still be running. And I wouldn't be surprised if somehow via either Apocalypse, because we saw that we didn't see Apocalypse's body when Nimrod was fighting him. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nimrod reprogrammed Apocalypse, as we see later, joins them, and then through that something happens. I don't know. We got to see. But on that note, so we see them being all radical. We see, Storm essentially doing one thing that's pretty intimate with the characters to prove this is actually them, full personality and everything. We have brought our people back. Like Wes said, we see them, what are they? What is Cyclops? What is they? Mutant. So we see this rally. We see this radical moment happening. And then the conversation between Charles and Eric, Wes, what did you think about that? Because I think that's the first moment in this process since they've been on the same page where I start to feel like maybe Magneto is thinking things are going too far.
Well, it is. They're doing some crazy stuff because they're talking about the just begun, and you're like, okay, I don't know exactly what they mean, but once you get in the reference material, you find out. The plan is to resurrect all 16 million deceased mutants.
And depowered. Because remember, some of them are dead, and then some of them are depowered.
I don't know if they have a plan for the depowered mutants yet, but they do know how to resurrect the 16 million. And that's what Mr. Sinister has been doing, is compiling a comprehensive database of all these mutants' DNA. Now, how Charles gets a hold of their mind or their soul for re-uploading, I don't get that one. Like, Jonathan Hickman's going to have to come up with a pretty good explanation, because I'm like, I don't know how you can find the mind of a dead man. But they're doing some crazy. They have some crazy plans in store for everybody. Magneto is correct. He's going too far.
Indeed. And I think, and that's part of it, because that's the other thing that I love about it. Hickman brings up these discussions, you know what I mean? So, like, us continuing to find out about ourselves as a human race through science and different things, you know, like through genetics, like how much of genetics is memory? Like, genes do store data, and that's how, you know, different things like characteristics, traits, illnesses, you know, all that stuff can go on to the next generation, the next generation, or skip some. You know what I mean? Like some people have this sickness. You know, there's some things that my grandfather have, you know, that my dad doesn't have. My dad is fair skinned. My dad is, you know, closer to your complexion, Wes. You know, but I look like him. But my grandfather, I'm closer to his complexion. He was, you know, a lot darker. So how do these things skip? So how much of it, how much of the soul or the spirit is in the genes? How much of just the memory and the other data is actually in the part that Xavier was able to back up and copy? He wasn't. It doesn't say he was able to back up and copy all 16 million. But if some of that stuff is just in the genes alone, some of that core data, that might be enough in certain cases, especially if you're not trying to actually bring back everybody. If you just want to create soldiers out of some of the people, do they need to have spirits and souls?
I'm under the impression, the way that it is explained in the reference material, that he's going to have to upload 6,000 minds a day to get the job done, and that he's not capable of it. But I'm not sure where he's getting that from. But I will say this: there's a really great line between Magneto and Charles when they're talking about, you know, the work will continue until it's done. It's foundational, everything, i.e., this has to be done, you know, to establish the Krakoa. And Magneto's response is, they should have killed us all when they had the chance. Because he's like, they're done.
Hey, and I was so excited because that's a reference to the movie. They should have killed us when they had the chance, Charles. I forgot. What's that actor's name?
Ian McKellen.
Oh, dude. That was, everybody remembers that line. That was like one of the most iconic lines. So the fact that not only is Hickman pulling in the comic stuff and cleaning that up, he's even pulling in the movie references. Oh, yeah. I'm loving it. So of course, yeah, and then finally we get everybody gathering around. It's a very intimate scene, a very like religious overtones and undertones, you know, them being born again, you know, being naked into this Krakoan world and all the mutants surrounding them and covering their privacy, while as well covering them with love and showing them all this adoration. A very powerful scene. And then we get into the first bit of reference materials that Wes and I were talking about. I know you were chomping at the bit to get here, Wes. Did you want to cover the reference materials? Do you want me to dive into it?
Well, I mean, I did it on my review, and there is so much in here to chew on. So I don't want to cover it all, because we'll be here for 20 minutes just trying to talk about this.
Oh, we'd be here for an hour talking about it. Okay, yeah, well, I'll give the cliff notes since you went in depth. So essentially, it's just covering resurrection, and it's basically saying what's needed and who plays the roles. We kind of already know about Fabio Medina, Gold Balls. We know about Proteus. We know about Elixir. We know about Eva Bell, who is Tempest, and we know about Hope. Again, it just talks about, you know, the stages from the non-viable eggs being produced and then turning them into viable eggs via Proteus. Elixir kickstarting the process with the cell replication. Eva Bell maturing the husks to the desired age, like Wes talked about, and then essentially Hope Summers synergizing the resurrection mutants' powers to ensure the success of each resurrection. And that's basically the process kind of laid out, and it talks about how Sinister had created the library, like Charles had asked him to. And
there's a really important note there. That's the one we need to hit on that first page.
Did you want to hit on that part then, Wes?
Yeah, so it says, and while all current mutant modifications have been limited to optimal aging, i.e. getting them up to the age where they're ready for their physical prime, it is believed that in the future, designer modifications may be possible.
Why does he open all these doors?
He does it a lot of. So yeah, you know, your chimeras, your hybrid. Mm-hmm. All the things that ruined the world under Mr. Sinister's plan with I think it was the Mars mutant breeding pits or whatever they were called. So that was pretty good. And then there's also some interesting stuff. While it has not been tested, it's believed upgrades, extensions, stand-ins could be assisted by mutants such as Sync and Mimic. That's really interesting. So there's a couple backups, or they could even plus up the power of the process, maybe add some stuff. And then there's the Proteus problem, which I completely read wrong in my review, and I want to apologize if I confused anybody. So I was reading all this resurrection stuff, and I was like, so they're just keep killing Proteus off over and over? No, they're not killing Proteus off over and over. He needs a host, and he basically burns the life energy off the host, and they basically clone Charles Xavier's and always have one as a backup spares. He burns them off, making new clones, one after the other. I do find it creepy that Charles keeps cloning himself and letting Proteus use his body as energy, but there's a lot of creepy stuff in this comic.
Oh, it's very creepy. It's very creepy. It's got to make you feel something, and creepiness is definitely a big part of it. So that kind of wraps up the resurrection stuff. There is some more stuff. Of course, Wes goes more in detail in his review. So everybody watching this, obviously, if you haven't watched that yet, go and watch that if you want to really dig into to that part. And I feel like Wes, I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel like we're gonna have a later conversation once this wraps up, and I feel like the resurrection process, these materials, we're gonna come back and maybe have a discussion just on those alone. But we'll let that.
It was enormous. That was the best text-based reference material he's done to date. There's so much meat in there to pull off the bone and examine. There's so many different avenues for him to go with this story and how this can all fall apart and it could all go the wrong direction. It was great. I was very excited when I got done reading that, and I haven't really felt that about the pages of text. I've always felt them be kind of work, but not this time.
Absolutely. And I think, like, obviously all these little things, in my mind now, the spinoffs are starting to make more sense, because I'm almost like every little thing that could go wrong, or because I don't think all of this stuff is going to go. We only got a few more issues left. It's not going to all go wrong and all be resolved at the end of this. Obviously, planting seeds for fallen angels and Excalibur. So it makes sense why we're going to have all these different groups. I think it'll make more sense later. Let's go ahead and get to the United Nations, where I was wrong in one of my predictions. I was under the impression that because of what happened with Orcus and the Forge and them destroying the Mother Mold, sending it into the sun, that the human response was going to be, let's go ahead and storm Krakoa. That's not what happened. It seems like majority of the people in that council from House of X1 and their, the people that they were representing, those nations, for the most part, had went ahead and decided, let's go ahead and recognize Krakoa's sovereignty. This whole part, I mean, there's
because they were bribed with medicines, though. They didn't just like, oh yeah, let's give Krakoa. They said, give us the medicine. We want that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which, here's my perspective on it, and not that it's not a bribe, but I'm gonna swap the bribe word for offer, because it's fair. Hey, you get these things, like, it's not just money under the table. This is stuff on the table. You guys get to live 5 years longer. You get to cure all your mental illnesses, and you get a super antibiotic. It's an offer.
Absolutely, I get it, but it's not like they were just, oh yeah, we love mutant Krakoa all the way. It was like,
oh yeah, it wasn't altruistic. Oh, absolutely. It was definitely things were to happen on both sides, but they definitely weren't. Mm-hmm.
What'd you think about the note on Wakanda and why they didn't vote for it?
Because it never freezes in Wakanda. Man, I was.
They don't need mutant drugs.
Nope. No, they're technologically advanced enough. So, I mean, for Jonathan Hickman to have written Black Panther, you know what I mean, the character Shuri and all that stuff, especially throughout like Infinity and all that stuff, to me it just makes sense. All he's doing is really just showing, like, I remember what I did, I remember what I set up, and I remember who these people are. So it just makes sense. You know what I mean? I would have been fine if he never made the reference, but based off the fact that
I thought it was funny. It was a good wink.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Very, very, very good wink. Within the United Nations.
What do you think about the coercion, the manipulation?
That's the part that I wanted to get to. I thought that was dope. I thought it was really. I mean, in a story writing sense, I'm not condoning it, obviously, in real life, but for the story, it made sense, and that just made Xavier seem even creepier.
Yeah, he's more evil.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know that you use your mutant powers and made someone do something they never wanted to do that worked out in our benefit. Everyone at Krakoa thanks you, Emma Frost.
Okay, hold on. Is that how you took it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm with that. let me tell you how I took it. I took it in an even creepier way. God help me. I took it as she used her powers of persuasion to sleep with that female. This one right here. I'm holding it up to the screen. I took it that she used her powers of persuasion to sleep with that lady. Because if you look at how they're looking at each other, and you look how Hank brings them together, to me the undertone was that she slept with that lady. And like, and
that's not how I took it. I took
sure.
it as she used her mind manipulation and controlled the Russian ambassador to not partake in the vote. That's the way I took it. But
makes
it's Emma
total
Frost.
sense.
She could have done either. She's capable.
And well, I mean, I guess what's the overall thing? Like, that's definitely how I took it. That's how you took it. But the overarching thing is she manipulated and she violated, because manipulation is a form of violation. She violated that lady. She violated those people. She violated
their free will.
Yep. And
Charles thanked her for it. Said we're all grateful
for it. Hey, and not only thanked her for it, offered her something. Let me make you the head of this. Let me make you. What do you get to the? What do you give to the woman that already has everything?
Oh, well, the weird thing is she asked for an ambassadorship herself, and this is what he has to say, and I find this crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You already know I have much bolder things in mind. It sounds like we're gonna take over the world. You can have the moon or something when we're done with it. Like, what? So ominous.
I love it. And I don't love it because Professor Xavier is so different. I love it because Jonathan Hickman is driving this car home. He's saying, "Hey, this is not accidental. You feel this way about Charles Xavier because I'm making you feel this way about Charles Xavier. This character is doing these things, and that's why I enjoy it so much." So that wraps up that, and then finally we get to the last scene of the book. 2 days later, we got Wolverine down there in that area with all the embryos and the eggs, and he's just questioning Xavier and Magneto, like, are you guys sure you want to make this next decision that you're getting ready to make? Is this a good idea? And then Wes, they start going through why they're okay with it, and we know what it is. But did you want to talk a little bit about that? About how you felt?
Well, I love Charles' response. Like, everyone's just the same. An opportunity to change is exactly what I'm offering Wolverine. Like, he's just talking about any other mutants in the world. He's not talking about the entire cadre of evil mutants that have been their enemies forever. And then so then we get Mr. Sinister, we get Exodus with, I think, Sebastian Shaw's in there. It's just all the big bads, and then finally Apocalypse enters the scene, arrives on Krakoa, an island he has an interesting history with, and it turns out seems to have a very tight connection with. It's almost like they're buddies, old friends, which I think is a terrible revelation for Charles and a huge mistake, or a folly, if you will.
Dog, I love it. And I love the interaction. Wolverine is, as we say, he's about that action, boss. So he rolls up to him. He rolls up to Insaba Nur, a.k.a. Apocalypse, and is like, hey, man,
There's gonna be a problem.
Yep. And Apocalypse is like, little boy, ain't no problem. I know you've lived hundreds of years, or maybe even a few thousand, and you think you something, man. He said, I've been around and I battled people and I fought on this island before you were even a twinkle in your daddy's eye, little boy. Ain't no problems, only solutions. Now move out the way. Oh man, I loved it. But I'm paraphrasing. That was the Curtis translation. That was a skip translation of what Apocalypse.
So there's an absolutely insane line. I didn't really get into this on my review because I wanted to not spoil everything, and it was already going too long. But listen to this and tell me this doesn't sound bad. Apocalypse says, "You have finally become what I intended you to be. I could not be more proud."
Oh no! Profound and creepy.
Oh no! Apocalypse finally got the mutants that he always wanted.
Yeah, man. He got the ones that he really wanted.
Charles did it for him.
And Charles did it for him.
Yes.
Charles did it for him. Who would have ever thought that Charles would hand deliver? You know what I mean? Oh my gosh. I'm almost in a state of of shock, man. I'm a little bewildered. I'll be honest with you guys. Like this
I'm
thing,
telling you, that's why I said the word of the day is staggering. I was like,
staggering.
what is happening here? Everything is falling apart page after page. Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse. Oh, it gets phenomenally terrible to end the story. Perfect.
Oh my gosh. I don't even, I mean, I don't know if I have anything else. The last thing I'll say is the last thing that Professor X said, you know, and I love this part. I think this is a perfect way to wrap it up. Yeah, so like Wes said, you know, the part about you finally become what I wanted you to be. I cannot be more proud, as he reaches out his hand towards Wolverine. But Magneto says, we need to hear the words. And finally, Apocalypse says it. We submit to the laws of this land, be what they may, and acknowledge that from this day forward, we all serve a higher purpose than want or need. One people from this day forward. And then we got Charles coming in. Very well. Then let it be known. Let the word spread. Krakoa is for all mutants. Welcome home.
I don't think Apocalypse is being genuine with his bending of the knee. I'm going to be honest.
No, of course he's not. But at the same time, though, let me say this, and I'm not saying that he is, but from what we've seen in Powers, and which is interesting because remember I mean, not to say it's the same timeline, but we did see Apocalypse be the one to take them farther, and we did see North, and we did see Wolverine be with him and do exactly what Apocalypse needed him to do in that moment, no questions asked, and handled the business. And Apocalypse gave himself, when Wolverine was tattered and broken and beaten and wanted to complete the mission and couldn't. And remember, Apocalypse straight up said, I would have sacrificed any of you to get this information. It means that much. It's higher than a want or a need. It is purpose. And in that moment, he still ended up giving himself and giving his body for Wolverine so Logan can go and complete the mission with getting the crystal into Moira and then killing her to send her back to
Are you an Apocalypse a sympathizer? Is that what's happened?
Man, are you a sympathizer? I'm one of the horsemen, dog. What are you talking about? I'm one of the horsemen. Let's go. I'm Team Apocalypse all day.
I got accused in my review comments of being a human sympathizer. I was like, whoa, hey. Let's not go too crazy here. I'm a mutant and proud.
Say it loud. I'm mutant and proud. Man, hey, look, I'm a human sympathizer. I'm a mutant sympathizer. I'm an Apocalypse sympathizer. I'm a Jonathan Hickman sympathizer. I'm a this story sympathizer. Regardless of how you feel and where you want to put yourself in the shoes or this, that, and the third, first thing, remember, this is a fictional story, first of all. Yes, it is inspired by some things in real life, but overall, remember, this is for our entertainment and enjoyment. These stories are supposed to bring us together, not divide us and split us apart. So regardless of what you guys think, me and Wes didn't agree on everything, and I don't expect us to. All we're going to do is respect each other, share our theories, get more excited about this story, and then give you guys an episode of this every week. So thank you guys again for tuning in. We really, really appreciate it. We will continue to cover this. We got another one coming next week. Take a look out for Geekspan. Geekspan's going to be coming up soon. Wes and I are going to be breaking down some news and touching on some things. Wes, any closing thoughts or anything you want to share before we get out of here?
All right, I'm telling you all right now, this is what Charles saw when Moira showed him the vision of all the things that had happened in the past, and he saw the worst things that he could ever do in his lifetime in the name of mutant survival and mutant sovereignty. He's going to learn from these mistakes, and Dawn of X is going to be a much different story. And also check us out on the Comics Aficionados live on Saturday. I'm going to have Doc. Looks like we're going to have Gateway into Comics. We're going to have Ash on Comics. We're going to have a huge panel. We're talking House of X #5. We're going to get even more theories and speculation, and we're going to hear what all the other comic reviewers are thinking about this amazing comic book.
Absolutely. Make sure you guys are tuning in, and we will leave you guys with this. If you are us, then be with us. Come home. Magneto. Outside the bleed. See y'all later.
Hasta luego.